afternoon. I have several announcements. Every doctor, every hospital, every nurse have been notified. Every woman in this country must be aware that it's most important that they check their medicine cabinet and that they do not take this drug.
Minutes ago, a horrifying echo from the shadow of the thalidomide tragedy resurfaced. This substance, once celebrated as a breakthrough, quickly became a symbol of horror as babies were born with devastating defects. The tale grew darker as the truth spilled out. Medicine makers had pushed it without proper tests, putting countless lives at risk. What if this isn't the end of the story? Tune in to discover how decades later, the fight for justice and tighter regulations against reckless pharmaceutical practices continues. The thalidomide disaster. The reason for this fear was clear. Thalidomide was linked to severe birth defects in babies when taken by pregnant women. It became a grim reminder of what can happen when narcotic regulations are too weak and companies fail to act responsibly. In Britain, the impact was especially tragic. Many children were born with serious disabilities, but the rich company that made the substance had not yet paid any compensation. Years later, a big court case was starting, hoping to bring justice for those harmed. But right when the trial began, the main lawyer got a mysterious letter from someone who hadn't given their name. This letter could change everything. But this wasn't the worst part. The story didn't end with just a disaster. It's a lesson that still affects how we regulate medications today. People who were desperate for relief turned to the substance, not knowing the disaster that was about to unfold. The substance was first introduced as a miracle sedative, claiming to treat many problems. It was even marketed as a wonder that would soon come to the United States. Promoted for its supposed safety, it was sold over the counter in Germany, where it was developed by the company Chemie Grünenthal. To promote it, the company gave out free samples everywhere, starting with its own employees. They even encouraged pregnant women to use it, with no warning of any risks. However, the truth that came out later was much darker. It became a symbol of one of the worst medication-related disasters. This event not only changed the substance approval laws in the United States, but also made people much more aware of the dangers that could hide in medicines that aren't properly tested. In 1956, a baby girl was born in Germany without ears. Her father worked for a large pharmaceutical company called Grünenthal. At the time, no one connected her condition to a narcotic, which the company was introducing. The firm believed this substance would be a huge success, possibly as popular as aspirin in Europe. They had already made millions of tablets, eager to get approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to release it in the United States. The approval seemed like it would happen without any problems. But things changed when Dr. Frances Kelsey joined the FDA. Her first task was to review the substance. Although this was expected to be a simple job for a new employee, Dr. Kelsey wasn't convinced by the safety information provided. She noticed that the research behind the narcotic seemed rushed and careless. The only thing that seemed reassuring was that it didn't seem to harm rats, even in high doses. Meanwhile, in other countries, the substance was already being prescribed to pregnant women to help with morning sickness. But Dr. Kelsey grew more concerned about how it might affect unborn babies. Her worries deepened in June of 1961 when an article came out saying that it was safe for pregnant women, especially in the later stages of pregnancy. The article was supposedly written by a doctor named Heinrich Muchter, but it was later found that the company's medical director was the real author. But this wasn't the worst part. By the end of 1961, more alarming evidence from Germany started to appear. It became clear that the substance was causing severe birth defects. Though many doctors in the US had been given samples of it for testing, Dr. Kelsey's decision to delay its approval and demand more thorough research helped prevent a major health disaster in the United States. Her careful review saved countless families from experiencing unimaginable tragedy. In the middle of the United States, Dr. Kelsey stood out as a true hero. But what he did affected more than just his country. His actions reached people all around the world, including Giselle Cole in Trinidad and Tobago. Giselle was born to a young couple who had just gotten married, and even though her parents faced challenges, she was their first child and always felt loved. Giselle was born with a condition called Phocomelia, which comes from a Greek word meaning short arms, or arms that look like flippers. But despite what you might think, Giselle never felt angry or upset about her condition. After the disaster, which had gone on for too long without any serious government action, the U.S. started to push for stricter rules on the medication industry. President Kennedy led the charge, but the results were slow. It wasn't until the crisis reached a breaking point that the government took stronger action. This event helped create the rules we now know as the FDA regulations, which still protect people today. Sadly, for many who had already been hurt by the substance, these changes came too late to make a difference in their lives. One of those affected was Philip A.B. Brador, who became a symbol of both strength and heartbreak. After she was born, Philip's mother felt the deep pain of being rejected by her family and society because of her daughter's condition. But Philip, despite not having arms, lived a relatively normal life, showing just how strong she was. In another tragic story, a young mother, her husband, her sister, and their doctor were charged for what they called a mercy exterminating of their deformed baby. But this wasn't the worst part. Elsewhere, many families struggle with decisions about how to care for their children born with similar conditions. Unlike others, Giselle's parents never gave up on her. They loved her deeply and never considered abandoning her. Unlike some families who felt lost and turned to institutions for help, often disagreeing with doctors over what to do. In a sad and difficult time in medical history, many families went through the pain of seeing their loved ones need prosthetics for missing fingers and toes. Some people even had to cut off parts of their bodies just to make the artificial limbs fit. Medication companies, especially the one responsible, refused to admit their part in causing these problems. The company, Grunenthal, tried to blame everything from nuclear radiation to failed home remedies for the birth defects, completely denying that their remedy was the cause. As this chapter closes on the catastrophe, the next opens to reveal how these lessons reshape global narcotics policies. The Grunenthal apology, the fight for justice, was long and difficult. While some people got settlements, the money they received wasn't enough to cover the ongoing care they needed. It wasn't until 2012, 50 years later, that Grunenthal finally apologized. They said they had stayed silent for so long because they were in shock, but many people criticized this. After all, it was the victims and their families who had truly been in shock, not the company. Throughout decades marked by suffering and prolonged legal confrontations, an undeniable truth persisted. The substance in question had been universally prohibited since 1962. Despite this ban, the realization came far too late for countless individuals who had already suffered its detrimental effects. As lawsuits unfolded and testimonies multiplied, the medical community was engulfed by a profound sense of remorse and responsibility, grappling with the harrowing acknowledgement that this substance should never have found its way into medical use. The echoes of this regret resonated deeply within the halls of medicine, serving as a grim reminder of the need for vigilance and ethical integrity in the face of scientific advancements. But this wasn't the worst part. In 1992, an eye doctor named Robert Dido, while looking for treatments for a condition called macular degeneration, came across the medication again. He was searching for a medication that could stop blood vessels from growing and found that it might help. Even though it had such a terrible history, the remedy had been cleared for very limited, special uses, a fact that many people didn't know about. This shows how discoveries in science can sometimes bring back things from the past in unexpected ways. In 1964, a doctor in Jerusalem was caring for a patient suffering from severe leprosy. The patient was in a lot of pain and couldn't sleep. The doctor decided to give him a treatment called lomidopide, hoping it would help him sleep better. To his surprise, not only did the patient's sleep improve, but the symptoms of leprosy also got better. After more testing, Dr. D'Amato made an important discovery. The narcotic could block the blood flow to cells. This finding would later have big implications for cancer treatment. As this discovery became known, a small group of medical experts realized how important it was. They saw the medication as a new tool that could change things in medicine. Even though there were worries that it was dangerous and could cause harmful side effects, people began to see its potential. There had been a strong decision not to make a similar substance, flamide, again because it had harmed many people. The medical community now had to decide how to handle this new narcotic. But instead of simply rejecting it, the response was more thoughtful. Even though there was fear and concern, doctors recognized that sometimes treatments aren't perfect, but they could still be necessary. Now called Thide, it was put under very strict control. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, decided that female patients would have to go through careful testing before being allowed to use the substance. Since its reintroduction, Thide has been used to treat many diseases, including tuberculosis, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, and HIV/AIDS symptoms. Dr. D'Amato's early idea about the effects on cancer helped lead to new treatments for certain cancers. It and similar components are now key treatments for several types of tumors, but the balance between the risks and benefits remains a challenge. But this wasn't the hardest part. Finding this balance between helping patients and avoiding harm would become an ongoing struggle for doctors and researchers. When we go for a walk, many of us find peace and a chance to clear our minds. It's also a good time to think about the big effects modern medicines have on our world. These substances have been both a blessing and a curse for many people. But if they can ease pain or treat diseases, it doesn't seem right to reject them entirely. Take Bernier's story, for example. He was given a substance for a deadly skin condition, and it ended up helping him. He pointed out that a lot of medical breakthroughs happen by accident. Many medications are discovered before we even know what they'll be used for. They are like answers looking for a question. Even though some of these can have bad side effects, they might still be useful if we understand them well enough. But there's a catch. Thalidomide was once seen as a promising treatment, but it led to serious problems. In places like Brazil, where it is used to treat leprosy, babies are still being born with defects linked to it. Since 2005, there have been reports of up to 100 such cases. We might hope that in the future, we won't hear these kinds of stories anymore. But the truth is, we're still not there yet. The ultimate goal is to reach a point where narcotics like it are only remembered as lessons in history. We want to make sure that the mistakes of the past don't happen again. But here's the real challenge. How do we move forward without repeating old errors? It's not an easy road ahead, but with careful steps, we can learn from the past and shape a safer future for medicine. Its power to control the immune system turned out to be extremely useful. It showed promise in treating diseases like cancer, conditions caused by inflammation, and some long-lasting infections. Out of these, its biggest impact was seen in the treatment of multiple myeloma, a type of cancer that affects the bone marrow. People with this disease often suffer from weak bones, kidney issues, and a higher chance of getting infections. Before, the options to treat this cancer were very limited and often not very effective. This discussion sets the stage for the next chapter, where we examine the ripple effects of these medical controversies on future innovations. Lifesaver in modern cancer treatments. In the late 1990s, researchers found another important use for thalidomide. They discovered it could stop the growth of new blood vessels that feed tumors, a process known as anti-angiogenesis. By cutting off the tumor's blood supply, it prevented the cancer cells from getting the nutrients they needed to grow. On top of that, the substance also helped the immune system fight the cancer more effectively. It has become an important medication in treating multiple myeloma, especially when used with other components like dexamethasone. It was first used for patients who had just been diagnosed with multiple myeloma. However, because of its potential side effects, it's part of a special plan called Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategies, REMS, that helps doctors use it safely. Research shows that the medication works well in treating multiple myeloma. It can lead to a partial improvement in about 25 to 30% of patients when used alone, particularly for those whose cancer has come back. Most of these improvements are seen within 2 months. It also helps patients live longer without their disease getting worse, and it can increase their overall survival. When combined with other chemotherapy substances, the medication is one of the top choices for patients, whether they are eligible for a transplant or not. Many studies have shown strong results when using these combinations. But here's where the concern comes in. The substance is handled very carefully because it caused severe birth defects when it was once used to treat morning sickness. Because of this, it can only be prescribed and given under strict rules to make sure it's used safely. Its use can vary depending on where you live. Some countries rely on it more than others, especially where newer treatments like lenalidomide are too expensive or hard to get. Also helped scientists create newer pharmaceutical options like lenalidomide and pomalidomide. These newer medications work better and have fewer side effects. As new treatments keep getting developed, patients with multiple myeloma have more options and a better chance of living well. The substance, which is often remembered for its troubled past, surprisingly found a new purpose in medicine during the 1960s and 70s. At that time, scientists started looking into how it could help in other areas, away from its harmful effects on pregnancy, where it first became infamous. What they discovered was it had a special ability to adjust the immune system. It could either calm it down or boost it, depending on what was needed. This gave the substance a second chance, opening the door to using it for a range of health problems. The medication's power to control the immune system turned out to be extremely useful. It showed promise in treating diseases like cancer, conditions caused by inflammation, and some long-lasting infections. Out of these, its biggest impact was seen in the treatment of multiple myeloma, a type of cancer that affects the bone marrow. People with this disease often suffer from weak bones, kidney issues, and a higher chance of getting infections. Before the treatment, the options to treat this cancer were very limited and often not very effective. The story of thalidomide is a powerful illustration of the complex journey a medical treatment can undergo, transforming from a cautionary tale into a crucial therapeutic tool. Originally introduced in the 1950s as a sedative, this substance quickly gained infamy for causing severe birth defects when taken by pregnant women, leading to its ban. However, decades later, this once discredited medication found redemption in the medical community. Today, it is effectively used to treat a range of serious conditions, including multiple myeloma, leprosy, and certain autoimmune disorders. This remarkable turnaround underscores the evolving nature of medical science and the potential for rediscovering valuable uses for substances initially deemed harmful. Thanks to continuous research and strict safety measures, it has made a comeback in medicine, showing how science can turn around even the most dangerous substances. It's a reminder of how medical science can evolve and find new uses for old substances, offering hope to people facing serious health challenges. What was once a tragic chapter in medical history has now become a story of progress and healing. It proves that even big mistakes in healthcare can lead to important breakthroughs, opening the door to new treatments. The journey highlights how past challenges can be turned into future benefits. But that wasn't the worst part. Its early use caused a lot of suffering, which made its recovery even more remarkable. What once caused pain now brings relief to many. This change shows that with effort and careful testing, even the most tragic situations can improve, leading to positive outcomes in the long run. What do you think about the ethical responsibilities of medicaments companies in preventing disasters like thalidomide? Should there be stricter penalties for failures? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.